Good morning, fellow Plexers. So, in today's video, we're going to talk about proper naming for a Plex TV show library based on a question Eric posed to Plexaholics that I did answer last night, but this morning when I investigated it more fully, I found out more interesting information about the show Vice from 2013 and another reason why this is not working for Eddie. I'm sorry, for Eric. Excuse me, Eric. So let's talk about this formatting. I'm not sure if I like this or not, this renamed TV show folder. That's fine if Eric's library is actually pointing here, which it probably is because he wouldn't point to the root folder. So this is fine, but don't have a library folder called TV shows and then a subfolder called rename TV shows to point ahead of this. So this is fine. This is fine too. Vice with the year in parentheses. This is not proper. IMDb is not a source ID for Plex TV shows. It's a source ID for movies along with TMDB. A Plex TV series uses TMDB by default or TVDB as a source ID. Season 07, space 07 is perfect. And then the ball's dropped again here. The proper show name that you use for your folder name should be recreated as the first part of the episode file name. And then that should be separated from the season episode coding with a space dash space. Just like Eric separates the season episode coding from the proper episode name with a space dash space. But more importantly, Plex pulls episode ordering by default from TMDB. And again, IMDb is not used ever. So let me go into this test server. I have many test servers and I'm using this one on my newer Synology NAS where my actual Plex media is, but I've got some media on the SSD volume. So let's go into the default TV show library that I already have set up with some public domain media. If I click into the three dots and manage library to edit it and go to the advanced folder, I always change episode ordering away from the default movie database to TVDB because I only name from TVDB. I think it's the more flexible database between the two. So in Eric's case, this has to be the choice made for this show, either at the library level or at the show level. So if I clicked into the Lucy show and went to the three dots to manage library to edit, hit advanced again, at the show level, I can switch away from the default library level to pick what I want. And if a show has an alternate DVD order, that will show up also. Let's see if one of these other public domain shows has the DVD order. The Beverly Hillbillies does. So you see the movie database aired, which is default if you don't change anything globally. And I changed to the TVDB, which ends up being aired ordering by default. But if you were using TMDB and you had a show that could only be added, like Eric's show, with a TVDB aired ordering, you can change to that at only the show level. And I know this is not making sense yet, but we'll get it to make sense. So, if I go into Vice at TMDB, there's a 2020 show. If I back up, there's also the 2013 show. Now, Eddie was having problems adding season 7. So, if we go into, got to click season 6 in order to go back to the season list. If we look, there's only 6 seasons here. If we go to TVDB and look up Vice,
You have a text message.
we only see the one show. There's not a 2020 show. And if we click into it, we see that we have season 7 through 10 from Showtime. So TMDB considers these two separate shows, and TVDB just lets us combine it into one entry. Very convenient for our benefit. So that's the biggest problem that Eric is having. It's a different show. If he wants to name from TMDB, well, he wants to name from IMDb, and that doesn't have anything to do with Plex. Without him knowing it, his library is set for episode ordering from TMDB, and he can't change it to IMDb. So let's look for Vice here. It's probably listed as one show at IMDb also. Yes, 2013 through 2021. So again, that has nothing to do with the Plex series library. So if we go into the movie naming guide, if you drop down a little bit, it'll talk about source IDs. And for a Plex movie, you can use the IMDb database number structured properly, or the movie database ID number, again structured properly. And Plex tells us to put that in both the folder and file name. My apologies, I paused to address those text messages I was receiving. So, source ID for a movie for Plex is only IMDb or TMDB. And I think some of the confusion comes sometimes because MB allows TVDB to be a legal source ID for a movie library. If we switch to Plex's TV series naming guide, let's see where it's listed here. Okay, this section tells us the source IDs for a series library in Plex. It's either the movie database, and again, episode ordering defaults to the movie database, or it can be TVDB. And we already know Eric's series has all the seasons in one listing at TVDB and not TMDB. But now if we go back to the MB naming guide for a TV show, we see that IMDb is a legal source ID in MB land, but not at Plex land. So that can be the confusion for some people if they move from MB to Plex. This just won't work in Plex for a TV show. Just like the TVDB source ID won't work in Plex for a movie. It's all legal in MB. Okay, so we know what's going on. So there's two ways that Eric can fix this. So if we go to my folder structure, I've got some test folder structure set up that we can add to the test Plex server. This is the TVDB entry for this show with a source ID. And here's a setup for the movie database, and it's just named simply. But this isn't going to work because there's no listing at the movie database. So let's fix that. Let's just simply change 2013 to 2020. Now we need to make one more change. Let's change S07 to S01. So that looks better now. And let's change this to season 01. And let's change the show year in the show folder name to 2020. Okay, so I have an extra copy of this. This is something I renamed with FileBot. Let's get rid of the source ID. And let's test this first in a library that's going to pull episode ordering from TMDB. So that, all right, so let's move this out before we test the wrong structure. Then we'll move this in. It's all working in my brain. I don't know if you can follow this. Okay, so we have it named sort of like Eric has it named, just a little bit better without the IMDb source ID and the folder name. So let's go into Plex. Let me get into that server. All right, I'm on the right server. Let me go to libraries. And let's get rid of this. Let's boost that out of here. Let's start fresh. Okay, so let's add a new test TV show library. I'll click next and I'll point to the structure. It's on this volume. I have to get into this sort folder. And then we are looking at TMDB episode ordering. I'll add, and this is where you can have the option of changing episode ordering. We'll leave it at the default, the movie database, but normally all of mine are set to the TMDB. So we'll add the library. So we've got a show poster. We've got a season 7 poster, which is the same as the show poster. So that's our first clue that something's not going correctly. And when we click in, we don't have actual episode names. We just have episode 1 through 10. There's no metadata. And that's because there's no metadata to pull because it doesn't exist for that show. So let's go back to this. We'll leave that in there. And now we'll drop this into the same folder. Let's scan. So now Plex is going to properly pull metadata because the files are formatted for the entry at the TMDB. Eric's season 7 is now season 1 of a new TV show, Vice 2020, and all the metadata is pulled correctly because we've named to match that database. Easy peasy. You just have to check the databases and you have to understand that IMDb plays no role. So now let's pretend we did this, but we prefer TMDB as our source guide for TV shows. So now we're going to create a new folder structure for this TMDB episode ordering, and this has got the TMDB source ID and only the folder name, and it's got my more advanced but Plex compliant. If you look at that TV show library guide, it'll tell you to put anything you don't want the scanners to look at inside brackets. So this extra information about the media, I put into brackets automatically with FileBot. All right, we'll create that extra library. We'll go point to the structure. It's on this volume. Here's my sort library for TV shows. And here's the right one. Let's add that. Then the advanced episode ordering needs to be changed away from the movie database. If we don't make that change, there's no metadata for season 7 at the movie database. even though we've named the files from TMDB, this has to be changed. Let's not change it because there's another option. Let me add it, and it won't add correctly. If I had made that global change to TMDB, it would. But now at the show level, I also have the option to edit the show, go into the advanced, and change episode ordering to TMDB aired, save the changes, and then refresh the metadata. The season poster pops in. If we go in, we have the proper episode names, and we're all set. So this might be the way Eric or anyone else who's always named from TMDB, this is how you might want to do it if you have to name one show from TMDB. Do it at the show level and just realize that it won't scan properly until you change the sort order to TMDB aired, save it, scan, and also refresh metadata. So Eric, I hope this is helpful to you. And let's go back to your example. So Plex is very forgiving if you're using the latest scanner and agent for a movie library and a TV show library. This part that I don't like without the official separator probably would have worked fine. So I'm just maybe nitpicking there. But Plex gives examples of how to use that official separator. And I'm a rule follower, and I've had great luck with Plex being a rule follower. Can't use the IMDb source ID, and you're actually naming this show as it's named at TMDB, yet it doesn't exist at the movie database. So this is like a placebo. This IMDb doesn't do anything for Plex. So with this same structure, if you just change this at the show level to episode ordering from TMDB by editing it again like this, it'll probably scan in fine without changing your file names. But it's not going to work in every case, so you should just get on the program. So the last thing I'll show is I've got videos on how to use FileBot. So let's back up here. Rename shows. I'll use your example, just like that. So if I right click on it and open it with FileBot, I have custom expressions that are in my FileBot videos. I'll pick the one I use mostly. And I don't know why it doesn't want to rename it, but this is the structure it would add. It would add the TMDB source ID, season folder, and then it drops the source ID and the episode file name. But you see the proper separators, you see the episode name, and you see the extra media characteristics. Oh, it doesn't want to rename it because it's going to move it up a level, and I already have that here. So let's get rid of that. And let's do it again. And I also have custom expressions. If I wanted to name it to TMDB with structure, I can do that also. And it was red because it's not going to name that show because you had season 7, so the red said there was a mistake and it renamed it as season 1 because that show does not exist at TMDB with a season 7. So FileBot's useful if you know how to use it, and that red error basically told me something was going on and go to investigate it. So a lot of options, but now you know why you're having such a problem. There is no season 7 for this show at TMDB, and IMDb is just a placebo. It doesn't work. And I'm not a professional YouTuber, and most of my videos like today is just kind of winging it. I do a little background research, I get some file names prepped, and then I just let it roll. So it is what it is, and hopefully you found it helpful. Thanks for watching, and happy plexing.